What is up, my crew? My name is Stephen Murphy, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Nook Podcast, where we are all about real faith in real time. And I am all about introducing you to people who are gracious enough to share portions of their story, their journey with Jesus. And today I am really excited to introduce you to someone who, like so many others, I only knew through social media. Let me give you some insight into what that looks like. I reach out to folks who I follow on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and the like. These are folks that when I watch their content, I see what it is they're putting out there. I see a common thread. I see something interesting and I reach out via DM, maybe an email, and just see if they'd be willing to come on this podcast and have a conversation about what their life with Christ has been like, the highs and the lows. So for today's episode, I'm really excited to introduce you to Kayla Sprague. I first came across Kayla in some video content that I found last year on YouTube. She's involved with an organization called FIRM, the Fellowship of Israel-Related Ministries. And she and the team there started putting together some amazing video content that was showing not only the countryside and interesting places in Israel, but really tying it back to some important scriptures from the Old and New Testament. Having visited Israel for the first time myself back in 2017, it changed the way that I view the Bible. And that's not some big highfalutin, high thought kind of thing. It really made the scriptures come alive now that I had some context for where Jesus walked. And for that matter, where so much of what happened in the Old Testament took place. It was an amazing thing to walk the streets where I knew that Jesus and the disciples had walked. One of the things that really stood out to me, really caught me off guard about Israel, is that this is the birthplace of Christ, and yet so many people there don't even know who he is. So it was really interesting for me to meet someone like Kayla, who is a part of an organization who endeavors to introduce the people of Israel to Jesus, or Yeshua, as they speak of him over there. One thing I really feel like I want to point out here is that Kayla is a very young woman. I mean, at least by my standards, she's a very young woman. Yet she's got such a passion for Christ. She's got such a passion to reach the people of Israel with his message. And I'm never going to be one of those guys that says, well, you have to be a certain age or you have to arrive at a certain point to really be able to speak into something. I just don't buy that. Kayla is a wonderful person with a wonderful message, a wonderful story, and I'm looking forward to you hearing it. So settle in for my conversation with Kayla Sprague. First of all, I will just dive in maybe at the easiest point for me, in that I learned of who you were when I discovered the Israel U content on YouTube. And I don't remember when the first of those videos came out. It was at least a few months ago.
Yes. Pilot episodes, I think, came out last June.
Okay. Oh, wow. So it's been almost a year. Wow. Okay. Give me some insights into what set that content up. And for you and Dave, and I'm forgetting the third guy's name right now. Mike. What was the genesis of that project and your involvement in it?
I'm so glad you asked. Honestly, I kind of will backtrack a little bit. In my connection with FIRM, the Fellowship of Israel-Related Ministries, which Israel U is a project and a branch of FIRM. I went on a trip, I guess it was 2017, so about 4 years now, and really didn't have any context of Israel. Other than it's the place where this Bible was lived and written, and I want to go as a Western Christian to go walk where Jesus walked. I had no idea that my whole paradigm about the Bible, the Jewish roots of our faith, the importance of Hebrew and the scriptures was about to completely be flipped on its head. And so that's kind of the way like a few more years back. Well, then fast forward to 2019, we were having a tour, and Jerusalem Encounter were hosting pastors and leaders and young people from all around the world. And we had this thought, what if while all of the participants, the few hundred participants in Israel are going on a tour, we also have a digital tour option where people that can't afford to come or aren't here yet or don't quite have that connection are able to join from their couch, their living room. This was even before COVID, but we were like, we want them to feel like they're here, even though they're not here. So that's when we connected with Dave, because of his work on his personal Instagram page. If you've seen any of it, he loves Hebrew words, photography, devotionals. He works with Orange, the curriculum, youth curriculum organization. And so we thought, what if we co-hosted together at different sites? So that's kind of what was born. It was, he came in 2019 in June, and him and I and the production crew were just going all over Israel, following the tour groups, making little, I could send you the link to that tour, the tour on YouTube. And so from that, we thought, man, but we wish we had more time. Like, we're doing little snippets, little Instagram story videos about the olive leaf and the olive tree and the pressing in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I'm doing more fun fact stuff about Masada. We're doing like little clips, little snappy devotionals. But as we were talking and realizing, oh my gosh, I have so much to learn. I'm learning stuff from Dave and Michael, just them talking. Like, they're just talking.
Oh, sure.
And I'm like, how? I had no idea. And we thought, what if we created a series for people that are interested in Israel, whether or not they care about it theologically yet, that are interested in Israel as a place and want to understand and go deeper in their Bible. And we created videos, 5-minute devotional videos that really went in and showed a different perspective of either a place, a Hebrew word, a concept in the land, and from the perspective of Israel. So we were together in June 2019, and then we planned and wrote scripts for those 3 pilot episodes, that one's in the desert that you've probably seen, and we filmed it December 2019. And then we were planning on a whole year of production for 2020, and obviously everything was put on pause. So we released those 3 episodes, and then we've been working on some Hebrew word episodes that we're doing in the meantime, just from like a studio standpoint, because I'm actually in the States right now and Dave's in Australia.
Yeah.
And so neither of us are in Israel at the moment. Michael's a citizen and lives there, and is actually the CEO and leader of FIRM, the Fellowship of Israel-Related Ministries. And so he's there, and we're hoping by the end of the summer, we'll be able to record another batch of on-ground, in-person Israel U episodes. But that's kind of how the heart and vision came to be.
Well, for whatever this nickel is worth, I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed them, and might even go so far as to say that, granted, we can use COVID as a stamp for just about every stoppage of all things that we enjoy for the last year plus. My chief complaint is that there just wasn't enough of them, because having been to Israel the first time myself in 2017, it was just a mind blower. How did you even get involved in FIRM? I mean, is FIRM your full-time gig? Is that how did that even come to be?
Great question. So it goes way, way back, but I'll try to summarize it. I, again, had no context for Israel, but I grew up in the church, and I grew up going on mission trips and really caring about the Great Commission. And way back in 2012, I went to an internship called Teen Mania. And at that internship, I worked for my boss at the time, Kelly Dennison, now Kelly Sanchez, became my mentor. And through the years, just had really been in my life as a mentor. I was in youth ministry. I was in school. Well, then when she was moving to Israel with her husband, I paid attention, because I was like, oh, cool. Now I have friends there. I can go visit. So honestly, it really started as just this, I want to go visit my friends. I want to go to the place I've always been, my friends and mentors, now my bosses again. But, and the funny thing was I had just started in school. I had been in school for a while, but full time. I was just going to finish for the last 2 years. I'd been doing night school, and I called her. We're just having one of our mentorship chats. And I was like, I am so excited to get a normal job. I'm just going to work at Smoothie King or Krispy Kreme. I was just like so excited because I'd come out of youth ministry and I loved it, but I really needed a reprieve to be able to focus fully on school. And she's like, you're not going to work at Krispy Kreme. I was like, no, come on. And she's like, you're going to work for me. Well, she's like, prayerfully consider it. And so she had me do the first project I did for Firm was handwriting about 300 to 500 donor thank yous to go out with the end of the year statement. And I just watched Disney movies, wrote thank yous. That was my first project, had zero understanding of the organization. And then I went as an intern. And that's when really got a hold of my heart. So I was at a prayer meeting my first week in Israel. I haven't even toured yet. I've just barely started at the offices. We're prepping for conference 2017. We're at a prayer meeting. And I was reading this book because somebody had said, you're going to Israel. This is a great start. It's called Your People Shall Be My People by Don Finto. And a friend of mine that I just recently met there nudged me and she said, hey, that's the author of your book that you're reading. And I was like, no way. So I get to meet this like grandpa sweet man and, that night, and the Holy Spirit really got a hold of my heart that night. And I just in worship felt like God asked me, will you be a voice? And I was like, God, we've been over this. I said, yes, but later. Like, I need a break. I'm in school. I need my character and community to like be deep before I go wide. Like I just had been really in youth ministry. I just jumped in so quickly. And at 20, I was like, I need some roots. God, we talked about this later. And he said, you didn't let me finish. Will you be a voice for my people? And I was like, wow, that feels one, very weighty. Two, I have no idea what that means, right? I have really zero context other than a few chapters of this book. And I said, okay, Lord, you're going to have to teach me what that means. But once again, I surrender. It's yours and not mine. So that was the start. And then on that trip, I was there for over a month and a half, maybe 2 months. I just started falling in love with the people. I had no idea that Israel is statistically considered an unreached nation.
Yeah.
That millions of Christians visit annually, but few ever meet a local believer. I had no idea the things that now like burn on my heart about. And then I got to go back to my school, TKU, the King's University in South Lake, Texas, and found out they had a Messianic Jewish program. Now, it was too late to switch my program, but that means I had accessibility to electives to start learning and diving into the Jewish roots of my faith, the biblical feasts, Hebrew words, right there at the school that I was already in. So I just felt like the Lord was, aligning that. And from that, I started out at Firm on staff in a social media role and grew learning about. It's kind of been like Kelly told me, it's not that you need to know everything. You just need to take people along your journey one step of the way. And in a lot of ways, that's what Israel U is. And that's my role in Firm, is just to continue to communicate complex theology in an accessible way that's inviting and not accusational for just any Christian leader, young person to be able to see, hey, maybe there's more to this thing. Maybe it's not just the shofars and the prayer shawls, which all of those things are beautiful, but can sometimes distract from the simplicity of the foundation that's found in the scriptures.
Yeah.
So
that is so awesome. Well, I realize that, again, knowing that you probably know very little about me, I've been in television and video production for 30 plus years. So I think one of the things that really hooked me about that video content was not only the richness of the thoughts being shared or the scripture being shared, but it's that it's written so well, it's presented so well, it's produced so well, and that you've got these three personalities that are so engaging. And pardon me for noticing, but you're the young one of the bunch.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm actually 27.
Okay.
I look even younger than I am. Michael's only a year older than me, even though he carries himself and is very mature for his age. And
he's got that whole Jewish beard thing going too, though, that just kind of ramps you up another 5 years or so. Please take this as a compliment. You have got such a style about you that is so engaging that even from what you've already shared here, it's obvious that the passion preceded that online persona. And I think that all too often, pardon my age, kids your age can usually get that flipped around and think, well, everybody's on YouTube, so I need to go to YouTube and do things, whatever. I love that your passion preceded that, because it gives such a great credibility, and for that matter, gains such a trust in a viewer that, one of those First Timothy things, don't let anybody look down on you because you're young. You have got such a way of presenting these truths that I so appreciate, and I like to think I speak for many others, that seeing those scriptures come alive in the place where they originated is so awesome, which goes back to me saying, I cannot wait for more of this content. How do you guys even plan when there is still a lot of unknown to get back at that?
That is a great question. And first of all, I really do appreciate that compliment and you taking the time to notice, because that was something. And the reason I went back to school was like, I don't want to just be a puppet. I want to actually know, understand, and speak from a place of authenticity and not just repetition. And that's really been what's beautiful about Israel, is as I'm learning, I'm sharing. It's not it really is genuine. And so thank you for that. As far as planning for the future, we have like 10 to 20 scripts on the shelf right now for in person once the borders open up and we are able to travel. So we're still planning for the future of the ultimate. We want to be back in the land. We want to be on location, sharing those truths. But in the meantime, we're still working on ways to resource and create amazing content, recycling some B-roll and things that we already have from when we were there. And that there will be more of those episodes coming out in the coming weeks.
Awesome. Well, you talked about your schooling and even the shift to the Hebrew side of things. How has your involvement with Firm and these more recent projects, how has that changed the way you even approach Scripture yourself? Is it, I can only imagine that there's got to be a study angle because it's a part of what you do, but beyond that, to Kayla the believer, Kayla the follower of Christ, what do the scriptures look like to you now as opposed to 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
Lots of people say it, so it sounds cheesy, but it really is like it goes from black and white to being in color, or 2D to 3D, because when you start understanding the nuances, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface, right? Like I got to experience Passover with a family in Israel a couple years ago. I got to be there during the high holidays and Hanukkah, and like there's just something that clicks when you see even Shabbat, even the Sabbath observed every single week in Israel as a statute, as the nation's priority, that you're like, oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. This is what he meant. And so understanding Hebrew, I'm honestly still scratching the surface. I can't wait to jump into Ulpan when and if I get to move when the pandemic is over. But even just understanding more of Jewish culture and the little words that we're studying to write these scripts. Honestly, I'm learning along the way. Dave and Michael and another gentleman on our team, David Bosky, who's incredible, are, just sharing this wisdom. And I'm able to take their wisdom and just try to make it conversational. And in a way, yes, it's for scripts and yes, it's for the videos as I'm writing them, but it's also for me. Like I'm rewriting them and explaining them to me in a way that I understand. And every time I open the Bible, I can't look past or unsee Israel on every page. I can't unsee the Jewishness of Jesus and the disciples. I can't unsee the significance of the promises and the prophecies that are fulfilled from the New Testament to the Old Testament. And that, honestly, it made the thing that I spent my whole life studying, I'm a pastor's kid, all brand new again. And like there's a new, like I was digging and I thought I hit the bottom, and then instead you like opened up and there was an entirely new world. Like that's how it feels. Now obviously sometimes the Bible's dry and like I don't I'm not going to be like, wow, every single day I open this and I'm like, whoa, like it's an adventure. But I will say Israel in the lens of Jesus and his Jewishness and our connection to Israel has changed everything.
Sure. Well, you just opened a little can of worms there that I can't help but be curious about, that you're a pastor's kid.
Yes, I am.
So growing up in this, is there a way for you to kind of compare and contrast, and I don't mean to send this off into some completely different zip code, what you grew up under or in and what you know now?
I love that question because it's been a journey. And my approach to really the Israel piece of our faith is that people don't know what they don't know. And so in a lot of ways.
Okay, let me pause right there. You could not have said that any better, because I'm 55 and I've never been more aware of that. Please proceed.
And so instead of getting upset, because at first it was like, how did I never hear about this, right? Of anyone I should know. I grew up in church. I was a pastor's kid. I went to theology school. I did internships, right? Like, how did I miss this? And then the grace that comes is they don't know what they don't know. And what's been really beautiful in reading books like this with my parents, it's not that they didn't care or that they didn't love God and love his people, but they didn't understand the importance in a way that like propelled the church, one, into action financially in giving and prioritizing Israel, and two, in prayer. And prayer and finances really gear and are like the rudders to our hearts. And so now, literally a month ago, I was leading a prayer meeting with my sister at my parents' church, and there's people getting up praying over Israel. And I'm like, I never had this growing up. But now, through what God's done in me and other areas, my sister in things that he's really put on her heart with prayer room, it's like it's starting to turn the ship. And now my parents' church actually gives 1% of what comes in to gospel work in Israel. They give to 4 specific ministries. And so to see the shift, my dad's been to Israel now. My mom was going to come last year, but everyone's postponed. And so it's recognizing that even in the way I grew up, while I feel like there was so much missing, there was so much given, and that I had a foundation to build upon that really just needed some new areas, that maybe there were some cracks, or there were some pieces and parts that needed some adjusting. But at the end of the day, now that the Lord's done that and brought people in, he's shifting hearts. And I really see in Israel specifically, it's always through relationships. And the other thing is everyone's on a different journey. And so I don't need to rush someone else's process. I need to walk out my own and create easy on-ramps for them to start their journey in this way.
Right. Well, there's something else that you said that I am very curious about, because it's obvious that God has really put a really strong determination in you to be in Israel, to reach the people of Israel. But at the same time, it's almost like a dual role, in that you are this voice almost to your own age group as well as to just the Western world, in showing that life in Israel, that people group. Like you previously said, when I went there in 2017, I was amazed to learn how unreached Israel is, how Jesus is such an unknown, and that just boggles me to this day. And in truth, it was one of the reasons why I was so anxious to talk to you, because there's a real heart tug there for me now as well, to know that, and whatever little part something like a podcast has in letting other people know. So perhaps that's a bit of a loaded setup for an answer from you, but a dual role.
Yes.
In being in Israel for Israel, but also speaking back to your own home country.
And really, that's Firm's heart overall. We want to connect believers around the world with gospel-centered ministries and people in Israel. We also want to strengthen and unite the ministries in the land for greater effectiveness and health. And so how do you walk that line with both, right? And I think even when I was young, I wanted to be a missionary. And I was like, I'm going to Africa, right? Every teenage girl that's been on a mission trip feels called to Africa. And I want to go to Africa. And then I remember the moment where the Lord spoke to me about teenagers and how much more effective I could be speaking my own language to my own culture if I'd be willing. It's not as sexy. It's not as cool. It's not as, like, honestly, of like, I want to go live in another nation. And I had to sacrifice that at the time to surrender and go be a junior high youth pastor in Colorado Springs. And I loved it. But it was this moment of like, obedience is better than sacrifice. And sometimes the sacrifice becomes the idol. I want to give it all and go to the nations. No, I want to be obedient and say yes to you, Lord. And so in that moment, there was a reality that I can speak better to my own culture, my own age group, decade. I mean, I was young 20s, still am, right? But with Israel, I felt the same thing, where I am passionate about this, but the locals are going to be the most effective at bringing the gospel to their people.
Yep.
I will be a bridge to my people, right? I'll be a bridge to my parents and my sister and friends and churches and young people in theology school, much like myself, that maybe don't have this piece. And I'm going to be so intentional to try to learn to paint this puzzle piece well, because ultimately it fits into the greater perspective of the gospel and the Great Commission. And so I definitely think it's a both and. I think I'm more effective and it's more natural to be able to speak from a place of limited understanding of what I'm learning about Israel, the biblical feasts, Hebrew words, the significance of what God's done, what he's doing, and he's going to do. And the way that I'm wired in visual arts, the way that I'm wired in even youth ministry and communication is to take complex things and try to break them down to their most simple form and put them in a story. And I think through Israel U and through what I get to do with Firm, it's exactly that.
Well, is your goal then to live there full time, or will it always be more of a back and forth thing?
No, that is definitely the goal. And we were in the process of working on, we hadn't even put in an application though before COVID. I had just been going back and forth, and I had been in school, and that's what worked well. Then I had a year where I had this weird nerve virus. And so I was on bed rest for a while. And so that postponed things in 2018. And so it just kind of it's always been the next thing that continues to be delayed. But through COVID, through this year, the Lord just given me such peace of he knows the timing. Yeah. He knows what that's going to look like. That would be my heart, but it's not. I'm grateful that I still get to be connected from here. I still get to pour my heart out from here. And as technically a contractor, I do some other contract work, but I'm full-time with Firm in the sense that that's where my heart and passion and over 40 hours a week goes every week. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, even though you just touched on what that is like when you are there, is it possible for you to then list what is it that you're looking forward to most? And that doesn't have to be one thing, but what are the things that you are looking to most in getting back there?
What I loved even more than the places and sights and the sounds and the smells is the fact that believers there are the real deal. They mean it. They have to mean it. It can cost them a lot. And so just the community of believers, the people that have invited me to the table, the way that they live in routine with the feasts and remembrance, they pass on identity through experiential tradition that creates this remembrance that's deeper than just knowledge. And when you see that in Judaism, it's beautiful in and of itself. But when then you see Messianic families that are living that expression out with the knowledge of Yeshua as Messiah, it's overwhelming. It's just so beautiful. And so my favorite part is the people, both the people that I get to be in community with, the people that are ministries that we're involved with, the new people that hopefully I'll get to know. I really loved this group of teenagers in the Ethiopian congregation. They were volunteers with Jerusalem Encounter, and I still keep up with some of them on Instagram. So I always say that's the church I want to serve in, even though I'm not Ethiopian, but I think they've let me in. And just love the young people and teenagers specifically still. That's always going to be a really big deal to me and a really big part of my heart. But the other thing I love is the commuting. Like I have an electric scooter there. I ride to work. I ride home. You walk to the market, you walk home, you're doing life with people, and it's in a city, but it's also so meaningful. So it's like communal living, like community living is so important. There's music on every corner. There's always celebrations going on. And so I love both the believers and the culture within that community, but then also just Jerusalem at large. Like, I just love the way that they do life.
Is there a time frame for when you go back, or is that all still being determined?
Well, because of the pandemic and everything, hopefully I'll get to go back for a short period at some point later this year. But everything's open-handed right now. So there's been so many timelines, and everything just has to be surrendered. And I'm hopeful, but I'm also not putting my hope in it. And I'm just grateful to be connected from afar, because other people have had to leave too on the team. It hasn't just been me. It's been only about half of our team is still in Israel at this moment, just with just the pandemic going to, I have my video editor lives in Tokyo. One of our main writers lives in Denmark. Dave's in Australia. We're, spread throughout America. And then obviously the core and our headquarters is in Israel. But for those of us that are not citizens, we're waiting it out.
Yeah. Well, and what has that taught you? Or the better question is probably what's it still teaching you about patience?
Again, I think Israel, or any calling or any position or any move or any place or even any person, God gives it to us, gives us vision for it. And then somewhere along the way, it can become more about that thing, person, place, calling, mission, position, more than him. And I think what COVID did is I was like so passionate about Israel, ready to move, ready to go. Here I am, Lord, send me. And then in a moment, that's off the table for now. And you realize Jesus is either enough or he's enough. Oh, he's enough. Like, he is my source. And so while he's given me passions for different things and open doors for different things at times, that place or that thing can't be put above him and become an idol. Can't become about Israel. It's about Jesus. It's about Yeshua. It's about what he's done. And yes, I want to leverage my life to tell the story. I want to leverage my life and pour out my skill set, my gifts, my abilities. But if that means, like, right now, I'm in my Nana's attic where I've been staying throughout the pandemic. Like, where I'm with family, right? Like, I put up a bookshelf finally to make it feel more like home, and have a desk, and we're in the in between right now. But even the Son of Man didn't have somewhere to lay his head, and I have multiple places to lay my head. It's just the reality of Jesus. You really are enough, and even if you took away Israel from me, would you still be good? And I've dealt with that in my different bouts of sickness. Even if you don't heal me, will I be like Abednego and the fiery furnace brothers that said, but even if you don't save us, you're still good. And that reality of his character is not dependent on the way that I perceive my current circumstances, that his understanding and his way is so much greater. So it's teaching me a lot, but I finally am like hitting wow, we're over a year. The year mark was hard. We're over a year into this thing. I'm healthier financially, emotionally, relationally, because those things now have become more of a focus than like suddenly that's all you have. Like, you spend more time with your family and your friends. You're spending more time with Jesus because we don't have as many things going on. And those things have been a gift. So while I'm still frustrated at times about the unknowns and the uncertainties, I am grateful that it's been a exercise of dependence on Jesus and not on exciting things.
At the risk of this episode wrapping up as if it were some big appeal for you to go to Israel someday, it's not. I love Israel. I've been there. I've really enjoyed it, and I look forward to going back again someday. And I'm sure that you heard Kayla's passion for the country and the people that live there. That's not what this is about. It's ultimately going to be about pointing people to Christ. And in this instance, it's the history that you can walk around and see and touch. And it's absolutely amazing. And if you've never been there, I hope you can go someday. Maybe this is just a good opportunity to explain my own end game in this or any other episode that I have released. My end game is to challenge believers, the people who are already following Christ, to take that relationship to another level. And I don't care where you think you have arrived, there is always something more to discover in a relationship with Jesus. And the second thing is to encourage seekers, to encourage people who are still checking out the claims of Jesus and the Bible. You can find a very safe place here in this podcast to listen, to learn, and to ask questions. That's my end game, to connect people to Jesus. And that can look so multifaceted, and that's one of the things that I love so much about him. Your story is different from mine. Mine is different from Kayla's. And yet, as we tell our stories and encourage one another, our relationships get that much deeper with him and with each other. I've got links in the show notes for many things that we spoke about in this conversation, to the books that were mentioned, to the firm, to Israel U, to Kayla's Instagram. I just always want to be able to have people getting better connected, and for that matter, better informed about many things that are happening. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will catch you here next time in the Nook. The Nook Podcast is a production of Sozo Digital Media.